Hello and welcome to this month's progress update for the OpenMinerva project. My name is Armored Jack and I'll be presenting all of the progress that has been made since the last project report. If you have not yet seen the last project report, it was quite a while ago, but since then you can see that a lot has changed. If you have seen it, then you can already attest to seeing how much has changed since then. But before we get started, I would like to talk a little bit about the OpenMinerva project and what it is. OpenMinerva is going to be a free and open source collaborative environment built upon the Godot engine that will give the freedom to build all sorts of things with other people. There is not going to be any kind of required subscriptions to use this application. You completely own everything. Think of OpenMinerva like something of a game editor at runtime, and it's primarily intended to be used inside of a virtual reality headset. So it's going to be a VR application you can just put on a headset and go right into it. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and start discussing the latest changes with the software. So I'm going to go ahead and open a new instance. And already you can see that instead of spawning into a grid plane, you now spawn into a small circular platform. This small circular platform world probably isn't going to stay too long, but this mostly served as a simple testing ground to create world syncing. We'll discuss the world syncing in just a few minutes, but I am planning on replacing this little initial world with something more of a small, little cozy Roman island world. But that's for the future. The second thing you'll also likely to notice that changed from the last development video is you can see that the grid has changed. The other grid texture that I was using for this project I didn't quite like too much, so I ended up sourcing one from Godot shaders. I'll try to put a link in the description for the exact one that I use. I made some slight modifications to it to work with, I think it's object space or world. It was to change the space in which the texture is rendered. This is a shader, so it'll work independent on the size of the object it is applied to. That was the only real change that I made to it. This grid texture also now has subdivisions on it. By default, it has I'm not sure if you would call that 5 subdivisions or 4. There's 4 lines, but 5 squares in each little segment, row, column, whatever you want to call it. With the initial obvious changes out of the way, I want to show you all the changes that were made to the client editor mode. And once I open it up, you'll see that this is just another night and day difference compared to the initial implementation that was present in the last development log. Things just look so much nicer compared to then. It's mostly because the previous implementation was going down a different, we'll say, route using sub-viewports and such. I decided against going down that route due to the developmental burden that would have caused. So instead, I decided to just use the standard 2D overlays that are present in pretty much all the other Godot games. So there's not going to be anything special done here. But I think the best way to introduce all of the new stuff would be starting from the top of the screen and working our way down. So starting at the top, you'll see at the top left, you'll see a whole bunch of buttons, well 4 to be exact. These are Gizmo controls. These will allow you to change which part of the gizmo is active at each given time, and this last one here, the world icon, it changes the transform space that a gizmo is operating under. Let me demonstrate that right now, actually. I'll spawn in a new box here. And see, everything is active, so I'll have all the gizmo controls. I can transform, rotate, and do whatever I need to with this. But let's say I didn't want any transforms, and disable the transform, so now I only have scale and rotation controls. And if I disable rotation controls, I can only have scale, and then any other permutation I'd want, I can do anything like that. And now if you watch closely, if I disable this very last button here, it transforms to local space. So instead of working on global space, I can now move this based upon a local rotation and local space of this specific node that has been selected. The next thing is going to be on the same bar, but on the right side of the screen. You'll see 2 new little status indicators. You'll see one with a box that says 7, and another one with a little player controller that says 1. These are the current spawned nodes inside of the scene that you're currently in. So that means there are 7 spawnable instances. A spawnable is just that. It is a thing that you have spawned into a world. So this box, that's 1 spawnable. A player controller is made up of several spawnables, including a raycaster, a camera 3D, and stuff like that. It is essentially just the base nodes inside of the Godot scene. So one Godot node is one spawnable, is one way to think about that. And then the player controllers, that's very obvious. That's how many players that are present in the current scene. Because this is a local world that is hosted on my machine, I'm obviously going to be the only one there, so it's just saying 1. Next, let's look at this inspector panel on the far left side of the screen. Very top of the inspector panel, you can now see that there is a search bar. So now I can search for lights. It would help if I expand the tree. There you go. You can now see I have a single directional light in my scene tree. If I clear this, you can see all the other nodes in my scene tree. I should mention that this search bar is currently case sensitive. So if I type in light, lowercase l, nothing's going to show up. It's working based off of case sensitive names of the nodes inside of the scene tree. Okay, now moving down, you can see that there's more or less specific filters. These will filter based upon the actual node type. So if I wanted to see any light, for instance, independent of whatever name you've called it, it'll just show up here. So I could rename this to, oh, I don't know. We'll do not here. I don't know. But you can see I can still find it because it is a light type. But if I search up light here, it's not going to show up because it's not its name. And now, one last thing while we're over here, you'll notice that there is not a separated listing for gizmos. In the last development update video, there was clearly a separate little container here that was filled with gizmos specifically. I don't think I ever went into detail about what that was, but it was essentially a system where you could have selection groups. It's the idea of being able to select multiple different nodes at the same time, but being able to switch between those selections. So say if I wanted to select this box and I had maybe 2 other boxes somewhere, I could select all 3 of these nodes and add them to a selection group. And then if I needed to select something else or even a different selection group at the same time, I could switch between selection groups, so I can move this selection of nodes at this time and then quickly switch to the other selection and move those at the same time, and then it was going to be a little bit easier to do a lot of precision changes with a lot of select nodes. It was kind of a general solution to a specific problem kind of thing. I ended up removing that in this implementation, mostly because of the developmental burden that it was causing given the current stage of development of this current application. I think I'm going to re-implement it and re-add it at a later date, but right now it is not the time to be adding those kinds of things in my opinion. So I removed it to give it more time to cook and hopefully smooth out some of the rough edges around the system. The next topic is going to be node saving and loading. You might have also caught a glimpse of this just earlier when I was demonstrating the gizmos, but if you right click on a parent of a node, you can now see that you can have an option to save a node. This will save the node you click on, plus all of its children and all of the information regarding those children. So I'm going to just come in here, quickly rename this, since the save files are going based off of the name of the node that you are saving. So I can set this as example, just quickly, right click and hit save. Now, once it is saved, if I come over here, hit escape and then go to my spawnable section here at the very bottom of the dashboard and click spawnables, go to local, and I'm going to need to refresh it by clicking the path here. It's a small little bug that I still need to work through. It's not really convenient to have to refresh it manually every time. But you see that I now have an example entry here. So if I double click that, you'll see that nothing seems to have changed. That's because I didn't move the actual thing that I saved out. But if I move this out, you can see that it's duplicated itself. So let me go ahead and actually remove the one I spawned out. And then do that again, double click, and boom. You can now have Spawnable loading in. You'll also notice that it didn't spawn out with the correct names. That's another small little issue that I need to work through. But you can now save and spawn nodes inside of the application. This was quite challenging to implement. It's It was unexpectedly difficult to implement this kind of thing. There's a whole bunch of other under the hood stuff that you had to worry about outside of just saving and spawning a scene. It was quite the experience to get it to this point. But with that, an also important addition to this application is node parenting. You can now change the parents of nodes by just grabbing it and moving it. So you see, I can just reparent this capsule to root, and then if I wanted to send this capsule right back as a child under example, I could just grab it and then hover over example, drop it, and it has now changed its parent to example. So now it is transforming based upon it. If I move this under root, select example again, and you can see it's now independent. Put it right back under example, and it's now a child of it. Very easy. Also, the last thing I would like to bring your attention to is on the right side of the screen. This has been here for just a second, but you can now access basic properties of a given node in a scene. Unfortunately, this is not as feature complete as it ought to be. You don't have access to the underlying resources that you would probably want to use. So, for example, if I come to this capsule here, if you come over this Mesh Instance 3D drop-down menu, I'm sure you'd expect to see the resource of capsule and then be able to edit the capsule settings, but unfortunately, we are afforded no such niceties at this current instance. Did I say instance? I meant instant. Got instance on the mind. That's because I am still working on more deep under the hood stuff that's seemingly only tangentially related to it. It turns out that resource synchronization across the network is actually incredibly complicated, and it takes a whole lot of time to get right. But other settings are available, such as transparency for Geometry Instance 3D. I'm going to be honest, I'm not entirely sure what this does. I messed around with it in this environment, and I've also messed around with it in the editor. It seems to not synchronize correctly whenever you're running the game, but in the editor it almost looks like it works. I'm not sure what that's supposed to do in either case, but that is something I'm going to have to figure out. But something I am actually excited to show off is if you come down here to directional light, let me just spawn in a new directional light. I'm sorry, it's not directional light I was looking for. I'm looking for omnilight. There we go, that's what I was looking for. Whoopsie. But if you come down here to light 3D, you can change the light color. And then I'll just... Honestly, I probably wouldn't change the light color. I actually found out that there's light negative. Did you know that you can have negative lights in Godot? I sure didn't until I worked on this. But this is kind of funny. Let me turn on shadows as well. You can see that the shadows for negative lights actually... I almost want to say they emit light, but I don't think that's accurate. I just think they don't capture the negative light that the light's emitting. That makes more sense. Programmatically anyways, but I just think that's so cool. But yeah, this node editor is more of an initial implementation, while I also work on the resource editor, which is what I'm going to end up needing to have for stuff like the Mesh Instance 3D, which is the underlying component of these capsules, these boxes. I need to work on resource management kind of thing. That's going to be another huge rabbit hole that I need to go down to. To close off the client editor mode section, I would like to show off that I now have a free cam for client editor mode. This isn't really strictly exclusive to client editor mode. It is more of a free cam, but it was made with the intention of being used for the editor mode. So you can just come over here and fly around as much as you want. There is actually a mesh tied to where this camera is. So in a multiplayer instance, you are able to actually see where other people's cameras are and where they are in the world with their free cam. So it's not exactly like a little stealth drone kind of thing. But it is something that I will really try and show before the end of the video, once I work on the multiplayer joining section of this developmental update. Also, before I close off this section, I just reviewed my notes. I forgot something very important. You can actually now save and spawn worlds. So I have an example world here, Great World. Actually, let's go ahead and start with saving a world, because Great World isn't exactly a great world. So to save a world, you'll end up coming down to your dashboard in the bottom left hand corner. You go to Instance down here, select World, and then you'll give your world a name. So let's just say Greater World. and then we hit save, and then this will save the world as a spawnable, which in the future would allow me to give players an option to either start a new world, or if desired, you can spawn in a world as a spawnable inside of the world you're currently in, meaning you can have multiple worlds inside of the same world kind of thing. It's more of a physical thing and not a server thing. So if you wanted to show somebody your home world, but they were in their home world, you could just spawn in your home world next to their home world in the same session. Not sure why you'd want to do that, but you can potentially in the future. But after you've saved the world, we can refresh this, and then you can see a selection here, Greater World. I'm also working on the UI for this, so to differentiate worlds with traditional spawnables. But if you select on a world currently, you'll see a new window pop up. This is using a new dialogue system that's alpha quality, to put it nicely. But this dialogue system will show up in... Wait, does it still say window name? Oh, whoops, I forgot to change that. Beyond the weird little tiny mistakes that I've made, you'll see a new window pop up for creating a new world, and then you'll see that the base was changed to custom, and then base world directory, it's to where the spawnable is actually located on your system. So by default, Godot is using the user prefix, which is going to be my user prefix, spawnables, and then the world hash. Think of it kind of like a world ID. And then once we hit start, you can see I'm dumped into a duplicate world that is based upon the other world that was currently in. So I think this is the original world. So if I come over here, just like that, this is the original. And then if I come back to this second session, it's pretty much the same thing, but it's a different instance. So I can leave this and come back here. Also, you probably noticed that the light wasn't exactly synchronized. That's another little small saving bug that I gotta work for. Whenever you load in a spawnable, it doesn't exactly parse all the change things correctly. Some small things like the light negative are actually not being honored whenever reading from the spawnable file. So that's a little small bug I have to fix for next time. Also, with this system, in order to get it to work, or at least test the system in development, I needed to create a kind of a separate system that was related to this, where it allows you to create new worlds. So if you come down here to the session selection little area of the dashboard, you'll see this button down here that says Create World. Clicking on Create World will open up another dialog that is also named incorrectly. I swear it used to be named correctly. I'm not sure what happened, but I'm going to fix that. It is an incredibly easy thing to fix. But you'll see here, if you come down here to base, you'll see there's all kinds of base worlds that exist here. Currently, the only one that is available at this stage is Grid. Debug does not exist yet. Homeworld is where we actually are now, and that has not been cleared to be used as a new world. Empty is an internal kind of state for whenever you're joining a world. And same thing for custom. You just saw custom earlier when you were loading a custom instance. Some of these are probably not going to be able to be used in the future, or at least visible, because some of these are internal states used for the system whenever it's trying to decide how to build the scene that you are trying to establish yourself in. But beyond those conditions, if you just select grid, the only option we have, and hit start, you can see we're dumped into the grid space that you are probably familiar with now at this point. This is just a very large grid mesh that has a grid shader on it. So it is, I think it's 1,000 by 1,000 Godot units, so whatever Godot units are. But you have plenty of space to work here, and whenever the resource editor gets in, you'll be able to change the size. So if you need less, if you need more, you'll be able to change that easily. The next major feature that I have worked on is world synchronization on load. Before you joined an instance of a server, it would load the world entirely from disk and then synchronize the world based upon what was present in that world. In effect, this world loading bypassed the whole spawnable synchronization system entirely because the world was not a spawnable to begin with. Intuition would tell you that this would actually be the proper way to go, but I ran into some insidious issues, such as figuring out how to consolidate major things like, what if world items, the default world items that are present in a world, were deleted? Take this baseplate for example. If you loaded this off of disk when joining a world that used this baseplate as the base world, you wouldn't really have any idea of knowing, as a joining client, if it was deleted. I settled on just loading a completely empty world as the joining client, and as the host, the initial player in the world. Way back when the world was created, you would load the desired base world that you selected when creating this world through the Spawnable system that I had previously implemented that handles all of the synchronization automatically. This makes it so that if the base nodes in the instance were deleted, you don't have to worry about the conflict at all, and this makes the whole life cycle of the server and client much more streamlined. Now, unfortunately, there are still some issues with join synchronization. I would go ahead and demonstrate this now. So, I will be joining a instance that is using the same base world that we are on right now. So, we are going to be spawning into the home world that uses this platform with a grid texture on it. So when we go ahead and go to dashboards and then sessions, I will click on 456 since that is the server that I'm wanting to join. I'll click that, so I need to go back to home and then click on the newly joined instance, server we are now client of. We click on that and you can see that everything has went into light mode. That's because the shader texture that was actually being used for the cylinder thing wasn't actually networked. That's because I don't actually have any way to network resources or even more specifically shaders just yet. That is a more complex system that I have yet to even begin tackling. But as I have previously mentioned, we have spawned into a completely empty world with nothing in it, and then the Spawnable system automatically spawned out all the relevant nodes that were present. Minus the transforms, apparently. There we go. They just need to be updated manually right now, I figured. So if you just come in and tap everything real quick just once with the gizmo on the host, it's all in the correct positions now. So as the host, I can now move this around just like that. There are still a couple of hiccups that need to be overcome with this system, but it is making tremendous progress. One last small feature that I have added since the last development update is I now have Discord rich presence. This means that whenever you are in the OpenMinerva client, you can now advertise your server or whatever it is that you're doing through Discord. This is a small little change, a small little feature that I added at one point because I wanted just a small little break, but I also wanted to have this at some point, so I figured I might as well go ahead and throw this in there because why not? How fun is that? To close off this development update, I want to talk about my future plans for this project. For the immediate future, I'm going to be doing a month-long bug fest. This means that instead of working on new features, I'm going to exclusively spend my time on fixing the bugs and edge cases that are currently present inside of OpenMinerva. I'm sure you can tell by this development update that I sure need that time to add the polish that this application deserves. I also have an additional growing list of about 30 high priority bugs that need to get squashed immediately. This list is not actually including any of the edge cases or minor annoyances. These are the big boy bugs that have to get squashed pronto. During this bug fest, I'm also probably going to be taking intermediary small breaks to work on administrative stuff for this project, such as a more detailed installation guide for all of the supported platforms. I think I'm only really supporting Windows and Linux right this second, but I am going to be working on supporting pretty much any other export target that Godot supports. iOS, Mac, Vision OS, hopefully. But after this month-long bug fest is done, I am probably going to be working on the Godot resource management system so that resources can be modified and networked. This means that if you spawn out a cylinder, or if you spawn out into this homeworld, since this is a cylinder, you can edit the properties of the cylinder so you can change the actual mesh itself. This would naturally lead into shader support, so you'd be able to network the shaders. Then after that resource management system is done, I'm probably going to be focused more on better model importing support. It has gone from not existing in the last devlog to almost working to working perfectly, and then now almost working. Oh wait, I don't think I've shown the model importing yet. Okay, I have a model here. I'll just throw it into the world real quick, and then boom. That is a 3D model, GLB of course, that I just spawned into the world. Its shaders are not currently accurate. It's very shiny, so I'm not sure how YouTube compression is going to be handling this, but it has a very slight but obvious shine to it. This model isn't supposed to have that much shine to it, but model support, it kind of works, but it also kind of doesn't, so it's not in a good spot. I need to be working on this. This model importing fixes would actually lead into the next actual true goal of this project, which is avatar support. That means that I will finally be able to ditch these capsules that I've been using as player controllers for good. Once avatars are in, the next steps for this project is likely going to be virtual reality support. There are a ton of other small steps, like with the avatar support that I mentioned, we're needing to have resources, and then shaders, and then fixing the model import. There's another line of steps that I need to take in order to get virtual reality support in, such as creating a 3D dialogue system. So like whenever you create a new world, it pops up a new dialogue. I need to have some way to have this in VR that doesn't look terrible and doesn't feel terrible to use. I'm hoping by then, in a couple of months, to have a VR headset that I can use to develop the software with. But that's a couple of months down the line. But for now, I'm going to be working on the boring stuff, bug fixes, and documentation, while I take a break and more iron out the next steps for this project of substance. Going forward, I'm going to be trying to make a development update video at least once a month. I think I targeted once every other week in the beginning, but it went from me not feeling like there was enough to talk about to forgetting to talk about it, and then now here I am 2 months, about 8 weeks. Instead of once every other week, it is now once every 8 weeks, it seems. But I'm going to try and be better at that, but I'm probably not going to have too much to talk about in the next devlog because bug festing. But I'll see if there's something interesting that pops up, or maybe some fun experiences I have with debugging or learning about the Godot engine to share. But until the next devlog, if you would like to keep up to date with this project, I have a Discord link in the description. You are more than welcome to join if you really want to keep up to date with all the small little itty bitty details that come with this little project that I'm working on. Or if you just want to talk to me, or if you have any ideas or suggestions that I could possibly implement into this project, I would love to hear it. But until then, see you around.